Good morning, everyone. The Ranter is back to discuss the news of the day. And for my vantage point, the news starts with and continues with the impeachment inquiry. We've had 12 witnesses show up, testify under oath to the veracity of their knowledge concerning the Ukrainian call, and if there was actually a quid pro quo between President Donald Trump and President Zelensky of Ukraine for the purposes of Ukraine receiving the aid that was being withheld from them in exchange for them investigating Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, and Burisma. Alright, so we have these witnesses show up and explain point by point what was going on. And it turns out how this whole grand machination didn't even start with this call. That so many things happened prior to this happening, up into the call, and then so forth. We find out that there had been a smear campaign in order to oust the ambassador to Ukraine, Ms. Yanukovych, by Rudy Giuliani, and by extension those Fox News gerbils who tout anything the president does. And yet I have not really heard what was the problem with her and why they were smearing her. She seems to be someone who's very knowledgeable upon the ground in Ukraine. Their struggles are to have to deal with Russia. But she gotta go. She gotta go. She fights corruption. She gotta go. And I thought our chosen one gift from God, President Trump, was a fighter of corruption. But they wanted her gone. Maybe it's because is that if she was still in the job and this little hit squad being sent out on against Hunter Biden and Burisma, she might have an objection with. So yeah, she had to go. We find out through not only the transcript and through testimonies of who are the people involved in this activity surrounding Burisma and Hunter Biden, is that we got Ambassador Sondland, who is the EU ambassador, not the ambassador to Ukraine. So that's a completely different thing because Ukraine is not in the EU. But nonetheless, there he is. We have, of course, Rudy Giuliani and his little minions who are now indicted, who have their own little side ventures that they're trying to do in Ukraine. You have Rick Perry, who once his name was shown up, they threw him right under the bus, which is why he has been compelled to resign. So they're doing their work, right? We find out through testimony that Congress does the aid for Ukraine, and then Trump withholds the aid. And no one can tell anybody why. Why are they withholding the aid? The general vague explanation, which is almost a guess from anyone's point of view who is a Trump loyalist, said that he's withholding the aid because he has to make sure they're dealing with corruption. You know, if you don't describe what this corruption is, all you're doing is flinging a word. I started hearing Trump talk about corruption around the time that the whistleblower complaint came out and the transcript was released. Then all of a sudden it was corruption this, corruption that, but then you didn't hear one goddamn word about corruption before then. But no, they're going to go after Ukrainian corruption. They're going to go after CrowdStrike. You have to figure out what's going on with that. You need any help? Ask Rudy or my Attorney General, who, even though he's the Attorney General of the United States and should be dealing with crime here in the United States, he's gallivanting across the world trying to find dirt on Hillary Clinton and help with this machination involving Hunter Biden and Burisma. So yeah, there is also that. find out through testimony that Ukrainians weren't going to get a call from Trump, or they weren't going to have a call from Trump, or a meeting, or even their aid, until they at least announce that they're going to do an investigation on Hunter Biden and Prisma. They couldn't even get a meeting. They're not going to get their aid until this happens. Okay. They were even going to set up a time frame where President Zelensky was going to go on CNN, and right after he won the election, and he would announce these investigations on CNN. That would be it, and then they would get the aid and so forth. And then a little wrinkle happened. Someone who was hearing the call between President Trump and Zelensky found a few things that were improper with it, and so blew the whistle. Oh. And then they get the aid, and then there's no investigations, and supposedly all is well. Now, Trump defenders, be it in Congress or just people that you talk to, do the defense that, well, Ukraine was given the aid and there are no investigations, so there can't be a quid pro quo, and there's nothing really wrong going on here. Just move on. The reason why there is no investigations and the reason why aid was given is because they got caught. They got caught. The whistleblower blew the whistle. And Trump inadvertently decided, there was nothing wrong with this call, so I'm going to show you the transcripts. And just those who give Trump the massive benefit of the doubt that I don't understand how are the only people that believe this call was completely kosher when it wasn't. Zelensky asks for Javelin missiles. After he asks that, Trump doesn't really acknowledge that. He just goes, well, you need to do us a favor, though. And then we go into his talking about Ukraine, a 26 election, a CrowdStrike, and the Bidens, and how this is a very terrible situation. I just wanted you to know that. And the same thing he said about the Yanukovych, saying that, she's a very bad person, and she was doing bad things, and I just wanted you to know that. He wanted her to know that. He wanted him to know that. And Zelensky, I didn't hear Zelensky go, oh, gee, thanks for telling me. Yeah, he releases this transcript and thought he nailed it. It wasn't going to lead to other questions. Are there adults around this guy? Because this 72-year-old sixth grader doesn't seem to understand what he says or what he does that is contrary to what his Candyland thinking thinks it is. If there was no whistleblower, none of us would know any of this. If there was no whistleblower, the only thing we would know is that the newly elected president of Ukraine was going to go on CNN and he was going to announce an investigation of the Bidens 1 year prior to the main stage of the election, which would, of course, harm whatever chances Biden has in the election because, Biden went and inadvertently prevented the prosecutor from prosecuting or investigating his son, Hunter, while he's sitting on the board of a gas company. What people don't seem to either want to acknowledge or they don't want to say when they bring this stuff up was that when Joe Biden was pushing out or advocating the push out of this particular prosecutor. He wasn't doing it like on his own. He wasn't doing it because it was just this unilateral thing because he was going after the guy who could be investigating his son. The international community wanted this guy gone. This prosecutor, who he in and of himself was soft on corruption, who had Russian sympathies, raised a lot of red flags everywhere. And so when pressure was being put on Ukraine, including its own aid, we'll be clear about that. That year's aid to Ukraine was put up to them ousting this prosecutor. It wasn't done at the behest of Joe Biden alone, and it wasn't done because of some investigation that later the Prosecutor General of Ukraine cleared the Bidens of. It was done because the international community saw warning signs with this guy. And it wasn't like this guy was fired. It wasn't like they just pink slipped him. It was a parliamentary vote to oust him, and the vote came in and he was ousted. At the time, the prosecutor wasn't even investigating Burisma or Hunter Biden. That was put on the back burner. So at the time of his removal, he wasn't even investigating. But the thing about this whole thing is that this timetable that people are so blasé about it, vague about, they don't want to discuss it. So at the time of his removal, he wasn't investigating the Bidens. But they mentioned this anyway, because, why confuse you with details? So what do we find out on the Republican side of the impeachment inquiry? We find out nothing. All the Republicans do is whine and complain. Things that they can probably justly say Democrats did when they were in the minority. People talk about how the Russian investigation yielded nothing. That's because when they was doing the investigation, Republicans were in control of the House. And the House side of the investigations, they did nothing. Those few people that they did testify, they did in secret rooms. The same bullshit that they were complaining about. And none of the people that they had were under oath. Now, Democrats have people under oath, both in secret meetings and to the public hearings. They have them under oath. They put their names on the line, which is dotted, and have them testify. So what the Republicans do, what they do. They complain that they weren't getting their due process, that they didn't get their questions out, that all these secret meetings and all and the processes and all this bullshit arguments that you again say Democrats could have been doing when they were in the minority, because this is what happens to people in the minority. They don't run the control. And I hate to break it to some of y'all who want to run with this narrative that they're not being treated fairly. This is the same rules that they used with Democrats. This is the same rules they used, Trey Gowdy used during his epic Hillary investigations. What, 7 or 8 of them? But they complain. Whenever there's time is up, and there's complaining. Devin Nunez is just performing for Trump. This is all a hoax. There's nothing here. This is all theatrics. Well, it's interesting what we learn about Devin Nunez. Given we already had an inkling of what this guy is like since during the Russian investigation, he was rushing away from the White House in order to come back to the White House and brief the White House on information that he was briefed by the White House. So he got told by them to tell them what they just told him to tell them. My eyes are going cross-eyed. But then we find out that Devin Nunez has his own part to play in this epic machinations, because apparently in 2018 he was also investigating the Bidens and Burisma long before the smear campaign on Yanukovych, long before there was a Ukrainian call. So the timeline for all this has now got extended backwards. So we find out that Devin Nunez was off to Vienna to investigate on his own what was Hunter Biden doing in Burisma. And one of the people that was helping him is one of the people who was Rudy Giuliani's minions, Lev Parsons. I got his name right, probably not. Who now indicted on various little corruption charges. So Devin Nunez was working with this guy to go after Hunter Biden on his own. Apparently, the guy that they're talking to, Liv, he has audio and he has video of the stuff going on that he's handed to the House Democrats. If that's actually verified, and they post that, okay, keep defending this guy between all this. Becomes one of the chief frustrations. I think people go through this. You know, when they see something like this is right and righteous, for us, least the very least, ask questions about, and people are so set with their blinders to refuse to see anything and to defend this man to the death. Just go, why? Why? What are you benefiting from this? You look at politicians who are, like I keep saying, debase themselves to defend this man. Senator John Kennedy went on to, I think it was Jake Tapper or Cuomo. I think it was Tapper. And no, it wasn't Tapper. It wasn't Tapper at all. He went on Fox News with Chris Wallace. Chris Wallace asked him upon who thought hacked the DNC and Hillary Clinton's emails and so forth. And he goes, well, I don't know, and neither do you. And Chris Wallace goes, well, the entire intelligence community says it was Russia. And then Kennedy goes, well, it could be Russia, it could be Ukraine. It took him actually going on to, I think it was Como, when he came back on. Yeah, I think it was Como. He came back and said that he was wrong, that it was Russia. They pushed this conspiracy theory that Ukraine was also interfering in the election against Trump. I'm trying to figure this out as to where the breadcrumbs of the A to B to C to D is with this one. With Russia, it is actually pretty straightforward. Russian hackers hacked the DNC, hackers hacked the emails of John Podesta. This material was given to WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks posted it. Donald Trump waddles out to his rallies and then talks about it. There's the A to B to Z of this. Right? Trying to figure out what the theory is with the Ukraine interference and how they were interfering against Donald Trump. One of the things I heard was that, okay, let's work this out. Ukrainians, with the help of the DNC, hacked the DNC so that they could take the material, post it out for WikiLeaks to post it so Donald Trump could use it against themselves and then blame it on Russia. If this makes sense to you, you are in the tank. Because this don't make sense to me. Some things defies logic, and that defies logic. Where does any of that hurt Donald Trump? So how are they interfering with Donald Trump? Can you all explain that to me? This is rather rhetorical. No, you can't. But I already know that Russians were involved interfering in our election. I know because of the story I told you that is out there. That during the 2016 election, Newsweek, one of their officials went on to Rachel Maddow and said that they're going to have a story posted the next night involving Donald Trump doing business with Cuba during the embargo. That night, their website was hacked. Investigators found the IPs of the hackers that screwed up their website, and they were Russian. They were trying to destroy the story of Trump doing business with Cuba during the embargo. When Trump did his little jest upon Russia, if you were hearing, I hope you can find the 10,000 emails. That same night, they hacked into the DNC. And it is kind of cognitive dissonance to claim that Ukrainians had enough wherewithal and the ability and the resources to do this kind of high-tech machinations. When they need us as a lifeline. Each year we give aid to Ukraine in order to keep them afloat because they're constantly being attacked by Russia, both subversively through their agents, people who are sympathizers with Russia, people who want Russia to reclaim Ukraine, so they screw up and destabilize from within, and then the actual physical fighting, because yeah, they're actually at war. Russians are attacking them on their eastern border and people are dying. Russia annexed Crimea, which was a part of Ukraine. And one of the other defenses of Trump is that they talk about how President Zelensky said there was something improper about the call. They lift this up as if this is a sticking point. This is the proof. This is the nail in the coffin of this hoax, this Ukrainian call hoax, that there was no quid pro quo. Oh my god, people. You see, Zelensky has to say that. Look at it from the point of view of President Zelensky and the people of Ukraine, if you can. They are being actively attacked from without and within from Russia. Donald Trump is President of the United States, and the United States is a country that is supporting and keeping Ukraine afloat through its aid, both financially and militarily. Donald Trump is publicly a supporter of Vladimir Putin, if not actively, as in proactive, as in giving him money and so forth, and rooting him on publicly. With enough statements and enough actions, enough inactions, that gives anyone pause to think that he is not the also great defender of democracy. Another one of these little defenses is that he gives more aid to Ukraine than Obama. Who gives a shit of what he gives? He gives them more Javelin missiles? That's great. He's also trying to force them to investigate his political rivals. People want to compare and contrast the threat to withhold aid from the Obama era over the prosecutor and this over wanting them to investigate a political rival? No, that pressure, you can find that pressure on them to take rid of the prosecutor is a lot more valid and a lot more kosher than it is to force them to try to investigate a political rival a year before an election. Because the entire international community wanted that guy gone. And the aid was a means to coax them into that. But, so look at it from the point of view of President Zelensky. Is this testimony that we had from these witnesses hold true? That the aid that they were supposed to get, up to the point that they've actually got it, was 55 days past due than when they were supposed to get it. This aid was a lifeline for this country. So he was told and informed that he has to make some kind of an announcement that they're going to investigate the Bidens. So he agrees to that, then he gets the call. And then the call, he asks for the Javelin missiles that will help him against Russian tanks. As we talked about, that if evidently the Trump administration gives them more aid, gives them more military lethal aid than the Obama era did. Be that as it may, no matter what the motivations were between the two administrations of why they did that, it doesn't change motivations. That doesn't change that. So Zelensky asked for this. Trump asked for his favor. All right. From the point of view of Zelensky, he has to say this call was proper. He has to say there's nothing wrong with it. Because he's trying to protect his people. Let's not paint President Zelensky out to be a bad guy here in agreeing with this. He's actually a guy that is looking out for his country. That this aid is needed to keep his country stable and afloat when he has an enemy on one side and this president who's friendly with his enemies. This was a protection racket done on Ukraine. And like any protection racket that's done by street-level mobsters to like a candy store owner, the candy store owner will say, yeah, there's nothing wrong going on here when the cops come and they ask them what happens, because they don't want their merchandise smashed afterwards. They don't want the reprisals. And so President Zelensky is not going to go and say, yeah, this thing is all fucked up, that he's screwing us over. He's not going to say that. He's trying to protect his country. So there's nothing wrong with him saying that this call isn't proper. I understand his motivations. If it was me, protecting, let's say, not a country scale, but let's say my family, a call happens, and someone asks me if the call was proper or not, I'll say, yeah, the call is proper because I'm trying to protect my family. He's trying to protect his country. From the attacks that are happening on one side, and the other side trying to shake him down. Do this for me, and then we'll give you the aid. Quid pro quo, Clarice. It gets so bad that Trump has to go out and do that near insane statement in front of the yard with, and it's always the helicopter is always on, so he has to yell in his notes that it says, I want nothing, no quid pro quo. And then again, people are using that as some type of like, oh, he said it. He said there was no quid pro quo. Case closed. We're back over here again. He got caught, so he has to say that. You know, half of the defense for him would do so much better if Trump just kept his fucking mouth shut and didn't get his ego involved. Because then maybe, yeah, you can probably defend him far better with your theories. But he undermines you all the time. And yet you want to be loyal to him. Trump's been inviting Republican senators out to the White House to have little movie nights and meet and greets and dinners and so forth. He wants to invite them to Camp David for an adult playground. An adult playground. What is he going to hire strippers? Is Susan Collins going to get a lap dance? This story came out a few weeks ago, or at least a week ago, about this. And boy, that doesn't smack of bribery. Bribing the jurors at the potential impeachment hearing. Now, I don't know if all that's really necessary. Because no matter how much I approve of the Congress doing the impeachment hearings, I'm still realistic in thinking that it's still going to die in the Senate. They might not get the votes to kill it outright, that they'll have to have a trial, the impeachment trial there, but come on, guys. The Senate acquittal is pretty much in the bag. But here's the thing. I've said this many times. Impeachment is still right to do. It was right for the Congress to bring it up. It is their Article 1 priority to commit oversight, to look over these things, to ask the questions. And sometimes the right thing to do doesn't succeed, but you still do it because it's the right thing to do. In terms of being against Trump, or what I want to happen to Trump, how I want him removed from office, if it's between impeachment and him getting voted out, I want him voted out. I want him beaten. I want this great majority that we have to come on en masse and vote him out. I want the people who supported Trump to the detriment of their own livelihoods, who see, like, say, in the rural areas where their farms and their businesses are going under because of the tariffs and the broken promises and the lies. I want them to take off the political blinders and express through their votes that this guy screwed them over, that glad-handed them to get their support. But in the end, he screwed them over. People want to keep things partisan. People want to keep the two tribes separate. They don't want the compromise that I so desperately want for this country, because compromise is what's kept us existence as a country for over 200 years. But they don't want that. They want us to be all or nothing, either conservatives or liberals, and never the twain shall meet. Because in that way, as long as you keep that fighting going, then you can have people still voting against their interests because they're protecting their tribe and their chieftain. I mean, you have articles out discussing that Trump wants to take out Social Security. That'd be the next thing he wants to do after 2020. To telegraph that, it takes a lot of balls to telegraph that for this country that not only dislikes change, dislikes anything that takes something away from something they already have. Hardcore, rich conservatives just love the idea of robbing people of their Social Security, because they are from the crowd of, I got mine, screw you. I got mine, I can pay for my own health care, my children will be secure with my inheritance, my businesses are booming, I don't give a shit about you. So, this is great for me. This sucks for you, but I don't give a shit. Because I got mine. Welcome to my capitalist system. There was a movie called Other People's Money. I kind of reference that a few times when I talk about politics. Is one of Danny DeVito's lines in that he's the main protagonist / antagonist. And, the capitalist system is like, is survival of the fittest. It's the modern day survival of the fittest, where, the one who dies with the most toys wins. That's why mom and pop's businesses will go down to the big chains. But then again, the people then cater to the mom and pops during election time. It's funny how we find in our politics we give a shit about those people that, it gets us right here that they're supporting them, and then once the election is off, they don't give a shit about them. Rust Belt, oh, that's great for election. Don't give a shit afterwards. It's mom and pop businesses, don't give. People bring up often homeless vets. Now, the sad to say is that the epidemic of homelessness, especially amongst our people who are veterans of wars, or at least veterans in our military, but they find themselves homeless, this has been an epidemic for 40 plus years. I remember them talking about that in the early 90s. When we try to educate ourselves, if we can't educate ourselves through media and, picking up a book, then we try to educate ourselves through entertainments like movies, where there are movies about homelessness, movies about homeless vets. Even if you don't make them into the main topic, you make them sort of a side character into the main topic to try to help you think. But still, nonetheless, they're out there amongst the others who are homeless. And the only time we ever hear that in politics is when people use them as props and pawns. when they want to demonize people who are like, oh, migrants or illegals or both, because they don't know the difference between a migrant and an illegal immigrant. They're getting health care. They're getting taken care of. But what about our homeless vets? What about our homeless vets? Okay, you know what? Everyone should be taken care of. Everyone. You know, if you're just mentioning them as a compare and contrast, that they should be taken care of before migrants, but you don't give a shit enough to actually take care of those homeless vets that you're complaining about. Are you out there? If you are, God bless. But that compassion should also be for those who do not have it, who does not have that support beyond the homeless vets. I got so much to give, I can only give to one, I can't give to the other. How dare you bring up the other when we have this? 40 plus years, we have people who fought for our country wandering the streets of our country without a home. And you bring this up as if this is like a new phenomenon. But it is an example of how people will defend this man. They'll throw everything that they can, the kitchen sink. They'll throw things that are illogical, that makes no sense, that's batshit. And half the time it's just to distract. Even more than half. 3/4 of it is to distract. Because one of the things you do notice about these impeachment hearings is that they don't really challenge the witnesses on the veracity of their statements. They challenge the process. They wave their hands and be dramatic over Adam Schiff. And when they get up to the point where they're actually going to ask a question on one of these witnesses, they don't even let the witness answer. They complain that Adam Schiff does not let them ask questions. That they don't get them. He doesn't let them get the answers that they ask the questions of. Well, they don't do that themselves. One example of that is Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan was asking, I think it was Holmes, who was right next to Fiona Hill. He asked him a question, and every time the guy was trying to answer the question, Jim Jordan interrupted him because he didn't like the answer. It got to the point where Adam Schiff had to gavel him down so that Holmes could answer the question that he was asked. See, they're not wanting answers. They just want the grandstand. Y'all want to complain about the Democrats grandstanding? Take a look at a fucking mirror. They all are doing it. And sometimes it is to the point. They don't want there to be answers to these questions. They don't want facts to be out. They want to confuse, muddy the water, create the reasonable doubt when there isn't a reason to doubt. They go after a process that they themselves used that isn't within their rules and they were happy about when they were in the majority, not in the minority. But now that they're in the minority, oh, it's so terrible. Fucking hypocrites. We find out that half of them was already in the bag. I mean, Jim Jordan can't seem to find his coat because he's too busy defending Trump. Devin Nunez obviously is so beholden to Trump that he has to defend him at the expense of anything. And we find out that he's one of these people behind the scenes trying to hunt down Hunter Biden and Burisma. And in the Senate side, Lindsey Graham announces that he's going to get materials from the State Department because he's going to do his own investigation on Hunter Biden and Burisma. Now, a video came out viral of Lindsey Graham talking about Joe Biden and how, God sent Joe Biden to us, and that he was one of the best people that he's ever known, and this and that. And that got around. That got around, and Lindsey Graham's trying to defend himself in this and saying, despite how he feels about this man, we have to go after corruption wherever it is. He doesn't seem to want to go anywhere near Trump and his corruption, but let's go after Joe Biden because election. 1 second. I'm going to bring a little illumination. Time in. So, yeah, he's going to investigate Hunter Biden and Burisma. This is, I buy that as much as he's investigating Hillary Clinton. You see, when we're months and months ago, when they were confirming that we're going to do this impeachment thing, Senator Graham comes out and says, "Oh, I'm going to relaunch the investigations on Hillary Clinton. We're going to find that out." And then we didn't hear about that since. Distraction. And here's the thing. Investigations don't scare people who are innocent. Sure, it might be an inconvenience, but that doesn't mean that that it's wrong. That they have something to hide. So you want to go and investigate? Fine. He's been cleared twice now. So go investigate, dig your dirt for your precious patron to make him feel better in the fact that he's going to get impeached. He's going to get impeached in the House. Sure, he'll survive the Senate because y'all are just so lockstep, but he will have that asterisk on him for the remainder of his term. And his second term, if he actually happens to win again. He'll be an impeached president of the United States. He will join that lofty group of people, Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, would have been Nixon, but Nixon had enough sense to resign, and he'll be Trump. All that is happening in the past few weeks. And look at the ramifications of what's been going on. One of the main culprits of all this, seen now from all sides, is Rudy Giuliani. Now Rudy Giuliani's in the hot seat. Rudy made himself the proxy of the president throughout this machinations, according to Sondland and a few others, that they had to talk to Rudy. That was the quote of the President of the United States, just talk to Rudy. When Trump was on his call with Zelensky, the people that he wanted Zelensky to work with, especially on this investigations of Hunter Biden, was Rudy Giuliani and Bill Barr. The president's personal lawyer, his TV lawyer, because all he does is go on TV, who has no State Department credentials, it has nothing to do with the government other than being the lawyer of the president, is the person to go through. Not official State Department channels, because there's actually a apparatus, a kosher and righteous apparatus that you can go through when you want to have intergovernmental investigations. They didn't want to do any of that. So Rudy Giuliani was the one that was orchestrating all this at the behest of the president. He was the proxy. If you're talking to Rudy, you're talking to the president through Rudy. The president's directives were coming from Rudy, and that was understood by Sondland and anyone else that was in the loop. And according to Sondland, that was everyone. This wasn't a rogue operation in the State Department. This was a State Department operation. And now, Rudy's finding a nice warm place under the bus. Because now even President Trump is distancing himself from him. That all this bribery and extortion and all the machinations involving Hunter Biden and Ukraine. Apparently, according to Trump, it's all on Rudy. This is Rudy's venture. He had nothing to do with it. He wants nothing. He wants nothing. No quid pro quo. Rudy used to go on Fox News when this first hit. He talked about how much, he was going to be the hero of this story. The ego on him, man. Ego on him. Now he feels more maligned than a whistleblower. We found out more things through a victory of a legal watchdog group over the State Department through the Freedom of Information Act. We get hundreds and hundreds of documents talking about the smear campaign that they're going to do on Yanukovych. And it turns out, we find out why Mike Pompeo isn't out there defending his people in his State Department, because he was part of the smear. They were involving him. Rudy was in getting him to go along with the smear campaign on the ambassador of Ukraine. So he put his own State Department under the bus, which again doesn't surprise me, because if you were a watcher of this administration like I've been, you would have noticed how, since going back to Rex Tillerson, how they emptied out and hollowed out the State Department. They screwed them over years ago. These people you support. Why? We go back and forth on why people support this man. Sometimes we want to go, you know what, you support him, fine, whatever. We don't understand it, but it's your right, whatever, fine. And we try to be reasonable about it. And then other times, we want to go, what the fuck is wrong? Because there are people out there who are compassionate, intelligent people, conscientious, who are thoughtful, and they still side with this man. And you get to go, why? Why? Because you can line up all the things that he has done and said and fucking tweeted. And, so they'll just turn their head. They don't want to see any of that shit. They don't even want to defend it. Now, I'm part of a number of social groups. Social political groups on, Facebook and so forth. And I notice when you put up articles that has damning implications of the conduct, the character, and what this guy is doing or wants to be done, and then no one responds to it. No one who is a supporter will respond to it. They will post their own shit about him, on the positive light, talking about those rallies and so forth, and they'll laugh at pet names and stupid shit that he says about other people. But when you get down to the serious issues, they do not want to discuss it. They do not want to discuss why he wanted doctor offices to discriminate against LGBTQ people. How they want him to discriminate against gays and lesbians and trans people. He lost a court case. So that's now going to prevent him from allowing doctors to discriminate. You put this up, silence. None of his defenders will go and discuss this. They'll just say what the next laughing joke that he's made. So, and if you get people who defend us, yeah, this is terrible, but still, You compare and contrast. Look what the Democrats are doing. Democrats are doing nothing. Look what the Democrats are doing. You'll have the people who'll defend him again, once again, talk about the process, talk about Adam's shift, and they'll do all the distraction shit, but they won't actually talk about the stuff that's right there, the actual testimony. These people are testifying under oath. These witnesses at the impeachment inquiry. No one seems to challenge what they say. Shouldn't that be a red flag for you? But again, this is perception, this is narrative, and this is choice. People are choosing not to listen to the testimony. People are choosing not to read the evidence. Lindsey Graham is doing that. He's publicly says that he don't want to hear any of that shit that's coming out of the House. He wants to do his own investigation. He doesn't want to hear any of that nonsense. Stuff that are testifying under oath. Career people. The entire intelligence community says it was Russia in 2016, but we don't want to hear that. These people are saying that there's a quid pro quo. Well, I don't want to read any of that. I don't want to see any of that testimony. And here's the thing. It's not the matter that they don't want to read it. They don't want to see the testimony, don't want to read it. Because they don't believe it's true. I believe people like Lindsey Graham don't want to read the testimony or hear the evidence. Reverse it. Read the evidence, hear the testimony. He doesn't want to do any of that because he'd be forced to acknowledge it. Because there is some shame involved in here. If you don't see it, then it is not there for certain people. But if you're forced to see it, then you have to defend your side, and you know you can't defend it. So you just don't want to, you don't want to get into that process also. I just don't want to see any of that. It's pretty damn testimony there. I didn't see any of that. And it doesn't exist. Boo. That's what intelligent people do. Because they don't want to, like, come up with a lie. They don't want to lie to others and to themselves. They do enough of that. I'm sure I'm forgetting some things. I do that. I'm getting old. But to kind of segue this, at least for a moment, away and talk about the Democratic side, at least the Democratic presidential candidates. Guys, gals, you're facing Donald Trump. This is your election to lose. Why are you losing this election already? I have not yet seen the person to stand out. To be the one to inspire us. Because that's what the stereotype for Democrats are, right? We're supposed to be the ones that looks for that aspirational leader to inspire us, to bring us hope. I'm not seeing any of that here. I had some favorites going up from the debates. I liked Mayor Pete Buttigieg. I liked Amy Klobuchar. I liked Andrew Yang. But no one is rising up to the level that you see, that you can see be the nominee, that you can see being president of the United States. Everyone is having a drawback. Joe Biden, I love Joe Biden. Problem is, Joe Biden is in decline. He is. It happens to people at his age. And it's not something that you can attach shame to. It's just the way it is. Now, could he be still a good president? Yeah, if he has a good number of people around him. We don't know what goes on inside some of these White Houses and with some of these presidents until long after they're gone. where you'll get the tell-all books and like the recovered research of how some people, couldn't really govern with two hands and a flashlight, but had so many good people around them that they allowed to build the perceptional narrative. This guy was strong and he was hale and he was hardy and he knew what he was doing. He was looking after the country. We could be suing that right now with Donald Trump. He went to Walter Reed the past week during the impeachment inquiry, and they're playing that off like this was an unscheduled visit, this was a checkup, this was no, he's fine, it's no big deal. It could have been a lot of things going on with that. We don't know that in a dark room in the White House, away from all the staff, President Trump has his wig off and he's sitting there in a bathrobe, mumbling to himself, waiting to get his medication so he can look somewhat presentable. That could be happening. We don't know that because he has people around him to project the perception. And Joe Biden is in decline. He has his good moments, he has his bad moments. When he has his good moments, when he's on, he's good. When he's bad is when he starts rambling on and he's trying to find the thoughts to keep the thread of what he's talking about, and then he loses it. I mean, it's sad to see it. It's happening though, but he's still in the lead. He regained the lead from Buttigieg. Kamala Harris, I've heard people say that even if she doesn't make president, she could make a great AG. That's great, but now she's sliding away. So she's doing things that even Saturday Night Live is now getting on her case about, that she's just doing these things to get the attention, especially social media attention. Elizabeth Warren is sliding away, where I thought Elizabeth Warren always sounded pretty good on the stump. She's good with talking with people, but she's not good with some of the details, which is really weird because she's somebody that you can come up and have like a bundle of paperwork and stats and figures. But when she wants to talk about policy, she'll go that, and that. That's awesome. Except when it gets to the money. And then all of a sudden, that kind of falls apart. She has to work on that. All these people, there's plenty of time for them to work on it. We're 80 days out from the first primaries. So there's a lot of ways for these people to turn around. Pete Buttigieg is another one. I like Pete Buttigieg. I think he has a pretty good shot. He can connect with Midwest voters. He can connect with everybody. He has common sense. Every time you hear him in the debates, when people are trying to get animated in order to get themselves attention, Pete Buttigieg comes up and comes with the common sense. It's like, knock this shit out. But the thing is, Buttigieg has a built-in problem with the black community. And I don't know why articles have to bring up why that it's not because that he's gay. I know why it's not because he's gay. Because he was the mayor of South Bend, close to Ferguson, and he didn't have a proper response to Ferguson. But again, there's plenty of time for this. If Pete actually sits down with people and listens to people and not pull pranks, or not pranks, but not pull the political stunts where he's going to go to like a black church or something and be there for a sermon, or he's going to go here or go there and have photo ops. No, you sit down, you listen to people. You try to relate, you try to emphasize. Even if you can't possibly relate, try. People will give breaks to a lot of people when they show you're trying to listen to them. If you're not trying to listen to them, if you're just going to go there, shout buzzwords, you think that, I'm going to say this and they're going to clap. No, don't. Stop it. Everyone on there has a good way and bad way. Good points, bad points, some drawbacks. Even if it's really minor and mild, like Amy Klobuchar. I love Amy Klobuchar too. I think for somebody, if you want a quality in a president that I want the ability to compromise. I want someone middle of the road. I understand people's interest in wanting this far left stuff. the progressive far left stuff, like Medicare for all. I understand that. I want that myself. But I also understand the nuance of our politics. And I understand that we can't go from over here with Trump and people who were kind of hesitant on Trump, but they didn't like Hillary, so they went to Trump, or they went to Jill, and that meant that went to Trump because Jill Stein was only there for the margin. And you think that was an alternative than fucking voting for Trump? You voted for Trump when you voted for Jill. Be that as it may. You can't go from there to far left immediately, especially when there's stuff that happens in between. Like some of these people were talking about Medicare for all, with the exception of Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders' plan at least is honest enough to say that it will raise your taxes. But the taxes will go up, your copay and your doctor visit goes down, and that's a good trade-off. That is awesome. That is a great, honest answer that I can get behind. But people like Elizabeth Warren, who the math gets fuzzy, also gets fuzzy in the fact that even though so many people are not on insurance and people badmouth the Affordable Care Act because so many people are off insurance, so many people are on insurance because of it. And ripping away those people just to have this pie in the sky Medicare for all from her point of view, from her version, is no better than when Republicans want to repeal and replace Obamacare but have nothing to replace it with. That they just want to rip it out by the root, and then we'll think about what we can do about it later when you just screwed over millions of people who have insurance because of it. So that's no different from Elizabeth Warren's and Republicans from that. Because you don't have anything established. You don't have anything that people can go on. But Amy Klobuchar, like I said, she is great for the moderate view, the compromise view. She looks like she has the ability to talk to both sides. But my drawback with her is that she says that too much. You can say, "Hi, I'm from the Midwest. I can get people in the Midwest." You can say that once. We'll nod our heads. I agree with you. You say that over and over and over again. That no longer has value. Now that's just a gimmick instead of it being a fact. So stop it, please. The Democrats are not coming up with a candidate that looks as presidential as milquetoast at this point. They have plenty of time for someone to emerge. And there's plenty of people who have legit talent on here, like Buttigieg, like maybe Cory Booker, like William Castro. A lot of these, especially these younger people, that have the vitality that they can come back in 2024 for another bite at the apple. If we do have a Democratic president next, maybe some of these people can be in the cabinet, that be in that administration. If we're going to have a moderate that I want, if we want to have someone who's centrist and moderate in the center as president, you want to have that progressive voice still there. So any one of these people could be VP. Or get Stacey Abrams. She's awesome. But we're not seeing anybody emerge yet. And this is one of the fearful things that I had a problem with when it comes to impeachment. Because like I said, I want this guy beaten. I don't necessarily need him impeached, but beaten. But if you don't have somebody strong in the appearance of someone who's going to be the standard bearer of the Democratic Party, and for those left-leaning people of this United States, then you make it seem like your only resort is impeachment. No. That's why I don't want any presidential candidate talking about impeachment. That he should be impeached. No, don't say that. Say you want to beat him. You want to beat him in the polls. There's that rant on that. There's so much stuff that we have here. to go over with. And like I said earlier, those of us who are not Trump supporters, but no Trump supporters, know that a lot of these people are conscientious and thoughtful and understanding, that when they talk to them, you know they're understanding the words that you're saying out of your mouth, and yet they still support this guy. And I don't know why. You know, I was not a supporter of George W. Bush. I had a pretty low opinion of George W. Bush during the war, why we had to go into Iraq, the stuff that he was doing to prevent climate science from having any serious voice in the government or anywhere. Whenever there was conferences where I talked about climate science, they would handcuff their experts. They would redact the research so they could say barely nothing. But I can understand supporters of George W. Bush. And as much as I disliked him, he was still my president, and I acknowledged him as being my president of the United States. Because, for various factors, one of the things that President Bush had, that Clinton had, that his father had, that Reagan had, is, you know, it may be such a minor point, but the ability to be empathetic. When he's talking to you, he's using the voice and tone and manner that reassures you that everything is going to be okay. That real or imagine he's projecting out there that he cares about his country. This guy don't. Maybe you think he does, he don't. He cares about himself. Like my original YouTube video when I talked about whether he was a racist or a white supremacist, I said he couldn't be a white supremacist because he doesn't give a shit about whites. Man, that's the one thing white supremacists is supposed to project more than anything else, even more over than their racism, is their white pride and looking out for the white guy and make sure the white guy is always on top and all that bullshit. He doesn't care about any of that because all he wants on top is a Trump. Him. More so, even more than his children. He only cares about Trump. In these policies, is only caring about Trump. Either long-term or short-term, it's only a Trump-centric point of view. Sacrifice what you're going to do, I'm going to be fine, and that's all that matters. I bring up, the things that he does, that he wants to do. And there's silence. He wanted doctors to discriminate against gays and trans people. His defenders are silent. He had an opportunity to get people down to the border to get them immunized from the flu for free. And he chose not to do it. Because he wants these people to suffer for daring to come into our border. And when that article's up, silence. Anything that shows that he's doing something actually wrong and immoral, and maybe evil, you have nothing to say. Because you can't defend it. But, like Lindsey Graham, who doesn't want to see any evidence, you don't want to read the article, you don't want to click on it, you don't want to talk about it, because then you would have to acknowledge it. Because if you have to acknowledge it, then you're going to have to defend him over it. And you don't want to do that, do you? Because maybe, for some of you, he's just too goddamn entertaining. You know him from TV. He's your TV president. He is so funny on The Apprentice. He's so funny when he talks. When he says his shit that's meaningless, but that you're laughing at. his latest rally while he's talking about all the people that he beat Barack Hussein Obama. In what universe did he beat Barack Hussein Obama? He wasn't running against him. In fact, when you think about it, the one person who has consistently beaten him was Barack Obama. He not only, you could probably say that Trump may have beat him because they forced him to show a birth certificate. But the thing is, Obama had the last laugh on that because not only he showed it at the Congressional Correspondents' Dinner, that he did it under the strings of "I'm a Real American," Hulk Hogan's theme. And then he ran a number of jokes off of Trump that he just couldn't handle. But then people clapped. Yeah, yeah, he beat Obama. He didn't beat Obama for shit, but yeah, he said something that I like, so I'm going to clap. He's just a dancing bear to you. I don't think you were getting as deep into the politics as I am, obviously, to see where all the danger is. Y'all find him entertaining. Y'all find him better because he doesn't speak like a president. The presidents are very careful and controlled, and they're not very entertaining and all that. Politicians and other presidents before him are not all that entertaining. They're not speaking through the off the cuff and shooting through the hip like he is. No, because they understand being what the president means. The reason why they are controlled in what they say is because they know the world is watching. That the words of a president matters. That gears go into motion in different countries because of a president's stance. And he's not that controlled. He doesn't want to be that in control. He doesn't understand what it means to be president. He never did. He had 3 years of this now and still has no clue. He talks about how he has to obstruct justice. He doesn't say those words because he doesn't say those words, but he tells his people not to testify, to avoid and defy subpoenas like Pompeo, like McMulvaney, like Don McGahn, who now has to because of court order, which of course, Mr. Transparent President, who's done nothing wrong and he's completely innocent, I'm sure he won't try to appeal that. Yeah, there's nothing wrong, right? He's completely innocent, right? But no, yeah, he doesn't get any of this. He doesn't let any of these people who are first-hand knowledge testify. Because he's completely innocent. But he says that he's doing this. He would love to have them testify, but he doesn't want any other president to go through what he goes through. This is all righteous and above board of what is happening. He's being impeached because of his actions, not because of some conspiracy. People are saying that people wanted him to impeach since day one. People were burning Obama in effigy. They were slinging him up and lynching him and burning him in effigy when he became elected. There was a documentary where grown-ass white men were crying at the thought of an N in the White House. And Trump is being treated unfair. Fuck you. What the hell's wrong with you? And people don't think we gave him a chance. The campaign told us all we needed to know. First day, Mexicans are rapists and drug pushers and murderers, and some of them are good people. He made fun of a physically handicapped newsman on Rally. Any accusation leveled at him, even at the most mildest stage, he projects on his opponents. He proved to us what he was going to be. It's just one of the things I keep saying to people. But Trump being a liar. Thing is that to us, he no longer lies to us. Because we know he's a liar. He lies to you who believe him. Who believe that when he says that Obama wiretapped Trump Tower. Hillary Clinton is a bigot. You don't think anything untoward is going on? Why is it that every other person around him in his Trump administration seems to fail to register as foreign agents? They talk about how bad the nepotism is between the Bidens and how Hunter Biden got onto the board of Burisma because of the name Biden. How dare he, when the Trump kids could go out in the world and make millions while he makes 50,000, and you call that outrageous? What the fuck? Where you got Rudy Giuliani's own kid working in the White House for $90,000, and you're not batting a fucking eye to that? Whatever they accuse other people of doing, they do themselves. I don't have to go through a list of this, besides I'm speaking for over an hour. You don't want to be questioned as to why you support Trump. You just want to support Trump. You don't want to actually see what he does. You just want to support Trump. You don't want to hear what he says. You just want to support Trump. And whatever your motivations are, because you honestly buy the bullshit that he's throwing at you and think it's a fragrant bouquet of flowers, or you just want to stick it to them libtards. You don't give a shit about this country, do you? See, nothing is wrong, nothing is happening to you, so therefore nothing should be happening to anybody else in the world, much less your own country, right? I have these standing theories when it comes to supporters, rally level supporters who go red face and curse out the media and just act vicariously the fool because their leader does. If everything is status quo in your life, then Trump succeeded. If somehow something mildly improves, then Trump really succeeded. If something goes wrong, it's not Trump's fault, it's somehow Obama's fault 3 years later, or it's the Democrats' fault, or whatever. You have people who say that the Democrats in the House have done nothing other than this impeachment thing. That keep saying they do nothing, they're doing nothing. When they have passed hundreds and hundreds of legislation that sits in Senate and dies. They do other things, but you don't want to either notice it or you don't care. You just like the slogan of them doing nothing, because that helps you in your defense of this guy. You know what? I can buy the argument that the Democrats are not putting up a good show of someone to be president. Okay, I understand that. I agree with that in a sense. That does not mean you have no other options but Trump. even though the Republican Party is trying to claim there isn't. You have two other candidates on the Republican side that are challenging Trump, Bill Weld and Joe Walsh. There's your alternatives. Your party does not want you to have those alternatives. Your party wants to close down primaries so that there's not even a hint of them being on the same stage as Trump to give you an alternative. You're being robbed of your choice by your own party. So then you just have to choose President Manchild for another 4 years. I don't know. So many outlandish things. I touch on it a number of times of how people will double down and double down as opposed to admit to being wrong. It goes back to like a scene from My Cousin Vinny where he's talking to one of the witnesses, and the witness was saying that he was cooking his breakfast when the robbery happened. He just got finished cooking when they were coming out of the convenience store and they were driving away. And now he's having grits, but it wasn't instant grits because no self-respecting Southerner would have instant grits. And then Vinny pointed out that how was it that he was able to cook your grits and have them out by the time the robbery was done when it takes the entire grit-eating world 20 minutes to cook grits? And his answer was, I guess I'm a fast cook. See, that's the thinking. Paraphrase thinking here of people who defend Trump, who don't want to admit that they're wrong about anything, and don't want to admit that he's wrong on anything. You think about that on some certain things like the religious aspect, which I brought up a few times. How people who put a religious slant on this guy. Rick Perry came out that said he was chosen by God. Nikki Haley concurred with that. A hedonist plutocrat who believes he has nothing to be forgiven of by God. Something that any good Christian would tell you that that's not exactly a Christian aspect. That we all believe that something in our lives we always need to be forgiven for, and we feel the love of God when we're forgiven. But he doesn't want to do any of that. Two Corinthians walk into a bar, but nonetheless, they defend him and then they deify him. He's picked from God. He's chosen from God. His latest White House official is Paula White, who is like his evangelical guru that says that every time when she walks across the White House lawn, she's walking on holy ground because she walked there. That to defy Trump is to defy God. Beware false prophets, Christians. I have never been impressed with anyone mixing religion with politics. Any religion. Anything. And you can see that you can see that in so many places. But these faux Christians, these not really Christians, these people who say their shit and pass a collection plate at their mega churches, who tries to get the faithful to vote for Trump. I had kind of an epiphany about this. People who want who use religion in order to draw people in order to have them work for them politically. these pastors, this Paula White, these people, this Jim Baker, who who go out there and scare their flock that if impeachment happens, then Jesus won't come back. Which is a weird thing to say. That says, if you flip that around, it says, so if we don't impeach Donald Trump, then the rapture will happen. Oh, goody. Or, anyone that supports impeachment are demonic. Or, oh, there's just loads and loads and loads of this shit where Trump is now an apostle. Or any of that. That proves to me that your belief is not the focus point here. Your politics is. Your politics is your God. And your religion is your prop. It's your accessory. It's called Christian conservatives, not conservative Christians. See, the Christian part is on the side. The conservative is the main. That is the reality. That is your focus point. That is your belief system. And the Christianity is your facet. It's your side dish to your conservatism. Financial conservatism, social conservatism, religious conservatism. Your conservatism is your religion. And the religion is just the flavor of your conservatism. Those of you who use your Bible like a prop, or use it as a cudgel against those that you consider sinful, or basically just those people who are diametrically opposed to you politically, not even religiously, not even morally, just politically. There was on a panel, a voter panel last year on 2018 that they were doing, and one guy says that he trusts Trump more than he would trust Jesus Christ. Pretty much sums up that. Okay. This is Thanksgiving week. On a kind of a private note, or a personal note rather, this has not been a good few weeks for me, or my family, or people close to my family. I am not going into detail, but with that going on, all the stuff that's been going on, I've been trying to distract myself with stuff like politics, with things that at least I thought would entertain me. Just put my mind off things. But none of that is working. Even this is not working. So I'm going to take myself out of the equation for a little bit. I will be back because my ranting is inevitable, and my urge to rant will always rise. But you mice have fun in the cat's absence. But the cat will be back the next day. Until then, this is the Ranter. And be good to each other. Have a good Thanksgiving. And go watch The Mandalorian. And have fun with the little baby Yoda.